funding pause on gain-of-function research. So let me explain this a little, because whenever this comes out, there's always the pushing back and forth from the press. So like NIH now is going to do dangerous research. No, as a matter of fact, it's exactly the opposite. So a framework has been now established to guide funding decisions on proposed research that might be anticipated to create, transfer, or use enhanced potential pandemic pathogens. The program, everybody has to have a neat little name to it. This is called P3CO. So if you hear about P3CO, it's potential pandemic preparedness, care, and oversight. Now, why is this different from everything else we've been doing? It's different because remember the trouble we used to get in when someone would do an experiment, they would submit it to a journal, and just as it's getting ready to go out, everybody would start scrambling around, should we be publishing, should it not? So we decided to go upstream from that and talk about decisions that are made by government funded. Remember, we have no control over things that are not funded by the government, but in government funded activities to guide the funding decision before you actually do the experiment. I don't think this is going to be foolproof. Things are going to slip through, but I think this is a much better approach than we've had before. Okay, neglected tropical diseases, just to bring you up to date.
That's a direct quote from the DARPA rejection letter. The same proposal rejected by DARPA for gain-of-function potential was not rejected but by NIAID under your leadership. You funded Project Diffuse and its research that took place at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Why did you tell the committee that your agency has never funded gain-of-function research? Why did your agency award this grant despite it being rejected by DARPA due to its concerns about violating the moratorium that was in place? And finally, will you commit today to release all records fully unredacted by the end of this week so Congress and the American people can know the truth about NIH's role and the origins of COVID-19?
Okay. So again, Senator, it really pains me to have to just point out to the American public how absolutely incorrect you are. What came out last night on Project Veritas was a grant that was submitted to DARPA. Then it distorted and said, we funded the grant. We have never seen that grant, and we have never funded that grant. So once again, you are completely and unequivocally incorrect. When you joined the DARPA proposal was a grant that we never saw and we did not fund. So you are incorrect.
Our social media will have all the supporting documents, and we'll be supporting these for the record as well.
You're backing down on this? Why don't we go and look at the Veritas statement? They were talking about a grant that was submitted to DARPA.
Are you saying this was not, are you saying that this was viral gain-of-function research?
I'm telling you that you're saying
Are you saying that this was not viral gain-of-function research?
By the definition that you are very well aware.
Your P3CO definition is just a legalese to get away that allow you to do the viral gain-of-function studies.
Senator Marshall, if you'll please allow the witness to respond.
Senator, we know, and the misinformation, that the guide rails for what can be done or not were not established by me. They were established by a 3-year process led by the Office of Science and Technology Policy of the White House.
And decided by you in a secret meeting at the White House in December of 2019.
Senator, that is incorrect. And this refers exactly to what I was talking about in response to Senator Rand Paul. You are incorrect completely, and every time I try to explain...
keep saying you're incorrect, but the facts are on my side. So why will you not commit to sharing everything open, unredacted with this Congress?
So here's an example.
Dr. Fauci, this hearing is critically important to the American people. There are millions of people infected with the COVID virus.
Right.
It is impacting every part of our economy. Every family is asking for answers to critical questions. Both sides of the aisle have asked tough questions, but we are not going to allow this committee hearing to be another personal attack that undermines our ability to deal with this terrible virus that is impacting so many people. I will then turn to Senator Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
What happens when these sort of things occur is if they don't kill a lot of people, we just move on, especially when it comes to influenza, which people seem to think is just a word that means I don't feel well. Why would we want a universal vaccine? How does this work? How is a pandemic different than what we get every year? And where are we?
Whereas influenza is very unique in that it is a virus, a group of viruses. There are different kinds of influenza A, and let's just focus on influenza A, that tend to, we use the terminology drift from season to season, and that there are mutations that change it enough so that you really need to get vaccinated each year, and you try to anticipate the right match between a vaccine and the virus that will be circulating. And then every once in a while, as Michael alluded to, you have a very dramatic change, either by mutations or by evolutions from animal influenzas that jump species, recombine or what have you, and you have something that's called a shift or a real big change. That's really unique. I mean, viral infections that we deal with, polio, smallpox, measles, et cetera, don't do that. So we're dealing with a continual moving target from season to season and the threat of a pandemic. So the title of this session is The Quest for a Universal Flu Vaccine. So when we talk about a universal flu vaccine, it really right now is an aspirational goal, in that the quest being to make a vaccine that induces a response in the body to that part of the influenza that doesn't change from season to season, from decade to decade, or even that much when you get a pandemic, with the ultimate aspirational goal of having a vaccine that you could give relatively infrequently compared to now, which you needed every year. That could be every 5 years, every 10 years, or what have you, that covers the broad array of the influenzas that we would be experiencing. So that's in a nutshell.
Why don't we blow the system up? I mean, obviously we can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet. But there must be some way that we grow vaccines mostly in eggs, the way we did in 1947.
I think it's also that we haven't had this sense of urgency.
Do we need to have lots of people die for that sense of urgency to occur?
Well, the incredible thing is that lots of people do die every year, and yet we aren't mobilizing. You know, I would have to say, to be more positive, since I can't really answer the question of why is it taking us so long, because I think it shouldn't have, and you know, there really is not a good excuse. The science has had to move forward. Gaps in the science still persist, including our understandings about you know, immune protection, in addition to understanding the nature of this particular virus, which has its complexities. Certainly part of the problem has been that it's much safer for a company to just keep doing what it's doing than to try to do something new. But it's also, I think, we haven't funded all the work that needs to be done. And on an optimistic note, there's a lot going on now, and Tony is leading efforts, and there are other efforts, Gates Foundation, the European Union Research Horizon 2020, many other activities as well.
People always say to me, why should I get a flu vaccine? And I always say 23% is better than 0%. And as far as my math goes, that is true. And I'm just sort of curious, why are we so bad at protecting ourselves from what many people consider the sort of most likely virus to cause the most damage to humanity?
And if we take that scenario that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation funded from the Institute for Disease Modeling that says if we had another outbreak like a pandemic virus today, what we saw in 1918, in that 6-month time period, we would have 33 million people dead. And not only that, that virus would have been seeded all around the globe. So we're still behind the gun on the tools we use to make the vaccines. We have some reasonable vaccine foundations, and we can make them better by adding adjuvants or high-dose vaccines that are not fully utilized. And a lot of parts around the world don't have access to the vaccines at all. And so I think that the sense of urgency needs to be there, Michael, but also the fact that we need to leverage the tools we have and at the same time envision what that universal flu vaccine is in a very rapid, urgent pace to get there. Right now, they're, as you said, mediocre and slow. A mediocre and fast vaccine is even better than a mediocre and slow vaccine, honestly. But
That's the American way.
But we can make better vaccines and make them faster. But $361 billion every year is our economic cost for seasonal influenza. In a pandemic, that goes into the trillions of dollars. You know, we have to take that sense of urgency, that economic cost, that societal disruption, and the lives lost into perspective to think, how do we gather this information and share it in a very targeted way to accelerate development of one of these better, faster vaccines.
There was a discussion there about this sort of cascade from communication to coordination to collaboration to convergence, and we need to sort of work our way down that pipeline to make sure that we're actually getting all the way to the end to try to bring in as much as possible to take on this problem.
And I was starting to develop some public health preparedness programs. And I went to FEMA to talk to them about doing a tabletop exercise with us around preparedness for a biological threat. And we were going to do a flu pandemic-like scenario. And they said, you know, we don't do infectious disease. We do hurricanes, we do floods, you know, earthquakes, all kinds of disasters, but, you know, disease outbreaks. And I persuaded them to participate. And it was a remarkable thing to watch them as events unfolded, realizing just how much this kind of an outbreak would undermine all of the essentials of civic life, how it would undermine their own ability to mobilize and respond to needs, and also the recognition of the economic costs and productivity costs, in addition to the medical concerns, and ultimately the loss of faith of people in government and leadership because of the failure to be able to provide vaccine in a timely way and other things.
Is that in order to make the transition from getting out of the tried and true egg growing, which we know gives us results that can be, you know, beneficial. I mean, we've done well with that, to something that has to be much better. You have to prove that this works, and then you've got to go through all of the clinical trials, phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3, and then show that this particular product is going to be good over a period of years. That alone, if it works perfectly, is going to take a decade.
People just still don't think enough about what this really means in our daily lives and what the impacts are, even though every year we're suffering a lot of preventable death, illness, and disability.
Well, that's why I asked the dark and unpleasant question, does something really bad have to happen? I mean, it seems to me one of the curses of the public health world is if you guys do your job well, everyone goes along and they're healthy.
And they cut your funding.
Right.
At Flu Lab, our ambition is to defeat influenza. 650,000 people died last year, and they will die this year, and they will die next year. And we seek a transformative product. I think that we can absolutely, in parallel with the pursuit of an iterative process, I think in parallel we can yes and this. We need to set an ambition for the ultimate vaccine. This is broadly protective. It is once a year, or once in a lifetime. It is durable. It is for everyone on this planet, and it eliminates this annual scourge